Good afternoon, viewers. You are watching us live on QTV. It's your fourth edition of the IRI Accountability Program. This program is sponsored by the UN and implemented by the International Republican Institute with, of course, the guidance of Sahel TV. I am your host, Omar for this first edition. I am in the studio with Nfamara Jawneh, the Executive Director of Beakanyang, and Ebrima, of course, a civil society activist, and of course, a staff of Sahel. Welcome to the first program of the IRI Accountability show. We start with you, Mr. Jawneh.
Thank you very much, Omar. It's a pleasure to be part of this very important program, and we look forward to a very successful interaction.
Thank you. Ebrima.
Thank you very much, Omar, for having me. It is a pleasure for me to be here on such an important program. Yeah.
Before we go into the program, it's just let me just give the viewers a brief background of the objective of this accountability program that is, of course, like I said, taken up by the International Republican Institute. The main objective of the accountability program is to provide a platform for government, of course, officials, civil societies, and of course the Gambian people to interact, mediate, create awareness about the importance of government accountability and how, of course, government should be account to its citizens about its performances and decisions. And the talk show will provide opportunity for citizens to also share their comments whenever they feel so desire. So like I said, I'll start with Mr. Jawneh. We have a program schedule, question schedule, should I say, that will, of course, mainly focus on accountability. We will start by asking you, Mr. Jawneh. Of course, we know you are very experienced when it comes to the issues of human rights, the issues of government accountability, because you have been in the civil society for years now. The first question is, what is government accountability in your own definition?
Well, thank you very much, Omar. If you ask me about government accountability, it's simply about government being open, to the citizens, to the electorates, and in Gambian context to the Gambian people. How Gambians, as citizens of this country, will definitely access the right information that we need from our government, will know what our government is doing on our behalf, because at the end of the day, the sovereignty of the Gambia lies on the Gambian people. So the people that we elect, whether elected representatives, whether it is public servants, whether it's whosoever who is taking or doing a responsibility or a job or whatsoever on behalf of the Gambian people, reporting back to the Gambian people, and in a very open manner, for that matter, and in a transparent manner, for the citizens to know what these officials and these government workers, public servants, are doing on our behalf. So basically it's about government being open to the citizens, for us to know what they are up to and what they are doing on our behalf. It could be political decisions that they are taking on our behalf. It could be how they are managing our meager resources, and it could be issues relating to security. It could be issues relating to finance or whatever they might be doing on behalf of the Gambian people. So basically it's about government being open and being accountable to the Gambian people, for citizens to know whether government definitely is acting in the interest of the Gambian people or not. Because if government is open, ultimately citizens will be able to know whether what government is doing is definitely in our interest or not. So accountability in short is just about government being open and transparent to the Gambian people, so that we can know what government is doing on our behalf as citizens of this country.
Thank you very much for that elaborative definition of government accountability. Mr. Ba, do you have anything to add on that, or do you have your own definition of accountability?
Thank you very much. I think he has really explained extensively as to what exactly it is about. I think it is about, you know, for a state is owned by, it is for the people. Like, for example, I can exemplify by saying, you have your organization, for example, you take people that are working for you. You ought to know what they are doing, and then you ought to have an information of everything that has to do with it, because at the end of the day, you're part of it, and then you own it. I think if government is there for the, it should be there for the people, and they are the representative of the people. People ought to know what they are doing, because at the end of the day, they are representing the people. So in that process, I think I wouldn't add much into it, but you know, he has just explained everything. But all the time, government is supposed to be accounted to the people, because they are not there for themselves per se, but they are there to the people, and then they should be accounted on the any other activity that they do on behalf of the people that they're representing. Yeah.
Mr. Jawneh, sometimes we tend to, you know, put too much emphasis on the need for government to be accountable. Civil society organizing workshops here and there, all geared towards ensuring that government is accountable. But why is government accountability so important?
Well, I must say that the importance of government being accountable to the citizens cannot be overemphasized, for the fact that if we know what government is doing on our behalf, then that shows us that our government is responsible. Then it shows that, like I said before, the government is acting in the interest of the citizenry, or the opposite. And therefore, if the government is accountable, then there could be rapid socio-economic advancement, because citizens will now know that definitely the taxes that they are paying, all the decisions that have been taken on our behalf by our government are taken in good faith and are being diverted into areas that are of our interest, and not issues of you know, embezzlement here and there, corruption, or you know, at the end of the day, if government is transparent and open, citizens will definitely have trust in that government and will be willing to support the government towards the realization of our common good. So if the government is open and transparent, the importance are just many, that citizens will take ownership of whatever decision that the government is taking on our behalf, and will be willing to provide any kind of support that we could do as citizens for the advancement of our country. But if our government is not open, it's not accountable, it's not transparent, it has a lot of implications. Let's say tax collection, for instance, revenue collection, for instance. People will say, oh, well, why will I pay if at the end of the day what I'm paying is not being plowed back to the society? Except when we see few people enjoying the money. So at the end of the day, people want to pay their taxes and all other rates that they should pay to the government. But if they feel like the government is not accountable to them, government is not reporting back as to how they are spending those resources, citizens will tend to say, well, the money is not being spent on our interest, so why should we bother to definitely pay? So at the end of the day, citizens will tend to refuse to pay their taxes and all other rates that they should pay to the government. So basically, it's very important for any government, any genuine government, to be open, you know, and be transparent to the citizens. Not only about, like I said at the beginning, it's not about money. Money is key here, very, very important, because all the monies that the government is collecting on behalf of the Gambian people is meant for public good. They should be spent on the interest of the Gambian people. So, but again, the decisions, like I said before, the decisions that the government is taking on behalf of the Gambian people, we should know. Any decision that is of public good that the government is taking on behalf of the Gambian people, we should know, because the implications are many. Citizens will tend to make their own stories, you know, and then be making a lot of noises here and there, because we don't have a clear understanding as to what decisions the government is taking. Are they in the best interest of the Gambian people, or they are in the interest of only the few? And if it comes to the resources of the country, the same. People say, well, since we are paying the money, we expect the government to do A and B and C. But if government is not definitely doing that, then citizens will definitely have less trust in that government, because the government will therefore be viewed as a corrupt government, because at the end of the day, the information is not there. At the end of the day, the government, if you are not open, ultimately, Omar, citizens will definitely lack trust in you. They've lost confidence in you.
Of course, when it comes to government accountability and, of course, government being open, who wins here?
I think it is a win-win situation. If you're having someone who is working for you, and then the person is accountable to you, you know what the person is doing, the person is sharing information with you. I think at the end of the day, you will all work together collaboratively. And then when we talk about this thing, we are talking about that will enable or that can promote citizen-centric collaborative governance, and then that also enables innovative, sustainable solutions in addressing national problems. So whenever there are collaborations between the government and the people, and that can only happen if, like he said, if the government is just communicating to the people what it is doing, and then not mere propagandas, not mere of politicizing certain issues that people should know the realities of it's about. And then when we talk about those things, also it's not only about the money as well, but it's about also the bilateral relations or multilateral or regional, regional article treaties that the government signs sometimes on behalf of the people. So whenever people understand all these things, they can easily participate in the nation development, nation building process. But whenever that is not happening, people will in fact not know the direction of the government. Where do they really want people to, where do they really start to take the country? And then whenever that is not happening, it's only perhaps you who are just going to participate in nation development and others won't. And they, of course, you're going to blame them simply because they don't have enough information that will just enable them to participate in the process. And then that could be as a result of not even trusting the process, because so if you do not know something about a particular issue, you will tend not to even know how to participate in making it better. So yes, I think it was out of it.
Mr. Jawneh, being accountable, being transparent, and being open, we often use these words, but what is the difference between an open government and a government that is transparent?
Thank you very much, Omar. You can have a government that is open but not transparent. You can be regular and be giving information to the citizens as to what is happening in government, whatever monies have been collected or received on behalf of the Gambian people and how they are spent. That is openness. You are open to us to know regularly what free flow of information. But again, are you definitely accountable to us is another question, because to be accountable means you have to definitely tell us the true picture of how you spend those resources. And there I'm talking about, you are not telling us stories. You are not telling us figures that are not true. You are not telling us the opposite of what you did. So in short, to be accountable to us is to ensure that the decisions that they are taking are quality decisions. They are the right things that you should have done. But again, is the amount of money, the exact amount of money that you really spent and the amount of money that you received is the right information that you are transmitting to the public. Then now you are accountable, you are open. But if you are not definitely giving us the correct information, the correct data of how much money you receive, how you spend it, and the quality of the information that you received, and at the end of the day, then you might be open, but you are not transparent. So there is a big difference between the two. We have seen many people say, oh, a particular government is very, very transparent. They are always communicating. Communication is just one aspect of it. It's one aspect of it. You can be communicating, but what are you communicating? Is that the truth? Is that the whole truth? That's something else. So basically it's about giving us the right information, but again, timely availability of that information, and if it has to do with finance whatsoever, then you give us the fact, the real fact, not cooked figures, but as it's obtained in the books.
Mr. Ba, oftentimes citizens will feel so powerless in their own country. They feel so powerless over a government that they vote into office. What is the role of the citizen when it comes to demanding from the government that you elect into office to be accountable to you? What does what role does a citizen play when it comes to that? When you feel like my government is not being accountable to me, my government is not being transparent to me, what role would you play as a citizen?
I think it becomes, a collective approach then. Maybe different suggestions could come on different ways, but I think whenever that is happening, one will think of what are some of the reforms then that the citizens will be crying for. For example, if you're talking about government accountability, that goes with transparency, and then transparency cannot happen if there are no access to information. And then, for example, if you looked at it in Gambian context, it is safe to say access to information is generally a big problem that every other person is facing. But if you looked at also for example, the access to information bill is at the National Assembly, and those that are there that are representing the people, I think it is in the best interest of the people for that access to information bill to be passed, so that people will be able to hold the government accountable. But also you can see, maybe a bit ironically, it is there, yet it has not been passed for whatever reason. But I think whenever such situation arises, we have the people that we elect, for example, at the National Assembly level, to push to be by our side. Because at the end of the day also, they are there, and then they should be accountable to the people as well. So in that context, I think in most cases, laws need to be in place that will enable citizens, to demand for accountability. And whenever that is said, most of these laws are taken to the National Assembly. So the National Assembly members who are there also must make sure that, any other bill or any other law that is brought forward that is geared towards empowering citizens to demand for accountability, they just assist in passing those information. At the end of the day, they are there for that. And then I would just be citing the access to information bill, for example. It's kind of difficult to hold a government accountable if you do not have laws that should empower you to do that. For example, is it easy for me as a citizen to go to the council and I said that, I just want to know what are the resources allocated for the constructions of road, electricity and other stuff. If I said it, actually, government is the right duty bearers, and then I am a right holder, actually. I should be able to do that. But will I be able to do that if there are no access to information, for example? It becomes so much difficult. And then you can just see to what extent people have been limited, because if we do not have laws that should empower us to be able to request for these things legally. Or maybe there are laws that should be able to, protect our requests for us to have some of these things. But just to go back, I think whenever that happens, we have the National Assembly to go through. And then, the National Assembly also should be able to make sure that, they act to the best interest of the people. And then at this juncture, I will say, in fact, the access to information bill should be passed, because if that is passed, it's going to enable citizens to be able to demand accountability. Because if accountability is set, we are talking about transparency. And if you talk about transparency, we're talking about access to information. And then access to information also, we need laws in place that will enable citizens to demand for those things. Yeah.
Coming back to Mr. Jawneh, maybe before coming into the current government, how accountable it is, how transparent it is, because we will have at least a few minutes to discuss on that. Quickly, what does government account for? Example of government accountability in brief. Can you give us brief examples of government accountability?
Thank you, Omar. Yeah. Maybe before I come there, I want to add something to what he said. The question was very important. Citizens are very, very important in the development of any country. And therefore, citizens can definitely mobilize themselves in non-violent manner and hold the government to account by organizing protest and series of activities geared towards holding the government accountable. Citizens can move from, can organize themselves, like I said, in movements, organizations, or whatever you may think of, to hold the government accountable. We can protest. We can move to the National Assembly, express our dissatisfaction, go to the presidency, go to anywhere that is a public office to express our dissatisfaction, just to ensure that as citizens we are participating. Somebody said this, as citizens we should not only be sitting and then waiting for things to just happen. So we should be active participants. So I believe that as citizens we can definitely play a very important role in holding the government accountable. And at the end of the day, the government that we elect, be it the president, be it the National Assembly members, they come back to us. So we should be able to audit them. That is one way of holding them accountable. If they promise us A, B, and C, and they don't do it, when we come for elections again, we can definitely show them red card. And that's one way of holding them accountable for their actions. Meaning we are not satisfied with what they've definitely done in the previous term of their presidency, or maybe their as a National Assembly member. So we could do a lot as citizens. Yeah, having said that, you also talk about what government should be.
What does government account for?
Yes, what government
examples.
Exactly. I think at the beginning of the discussion, I said little about that. I said it's about the monies that the government is receiving on behalf of the citizens. This money is the grants, the loans, and the taxes that government is collecting. They are Gambians. They are meant for the Gambian people. So therefore, government should account for them. How much money government have collected, for instance, GRA? How much has government collected through the GRA? And all that, in a particular fiscal year, and how much of that money is spent on A, B, and C? That is one thing government can definitely, report on, account for. But also, like I said, the loans and the taxes that we are giving, and the grants, government is receiving a lot of grants these days that they are collecting on behalf of the Gambian people. They should account for them. They are not meant for them as individuals whatsoever, but they are meant for the Gambian people. So they should account for them. Again, like I said, the decisions that the government is taking on behalf of the Gambian people. You've seen in the past, we saw the government sign A and B with country A, B, and C. And people are just speculating the content of those agreements. Government should account for them. Government should tell us the true picture of what happened. What is in those agreements? Bilateral agreements with other government. Trade agreements that the government is having with other countries. We should know all these things. So as a government, it is the government's responsibility to account for every decision that they are taking on behalf of the Gambian people. Every dime that they are receiving on behalf of the Gambian people, and they are spending on behalf of the citizens. They should account for this. And I mentioned the issue of security issues. We had issues here when we have serious security threats in this country. And at the end of the day, the information will just go on the carpet. There will be commissions to be established. But at the end of the day, nothing will come out of them. So government definitely has a lot to be accounted for. Whether it's our natural resources, we have timber here, we have a lot of things in this country. Perhaps many people don't even know. So you go to the fishery sector, we have Chinese here. We have some other people who are coming to River Gambia, and they are taking all our fish all along, and the people believe that there has been agreement, according to government, between the government and those countries or multilateral companies. But at the end of the day, the true picture of how much they are taking from a river, we don't know as Gambians. How much those people are gaining at the end of the day, we don't know. And it's about accountability. It's about accountability. So the government has to be accounted for all these things. So basically, governments all over the world survive and strive in an open environment, making sure that citizens know all what they need to know for the advancement of the country. Omar.
Thank you very much once again, Mr. Jawneh. Coming back to Ebrima, you have heard Mr. Jawneh, elaborating on a lot of course, areas that he thinks are examples of government accountability. But how often do we see this in this country? When it comes to government being responsive to the citizens, when it comes to, of course, the treaties they sign, the agreements they sign internationally, and not only that, but even when it comes to the budget, which is, of course, one of the most important documents for development, because without a budget, there can be no development. So how often is government being responsive in terms of being accountable to the people?
Thank you, Omar. Anyway, we have, a systemic or, events that are just being seen as the moments when government accounts to its people. For example, the President's Meet the People tour, when, the, Minister of Information comes out and gives certain, interviews, for example, and the likes. But also, the timeliness of some of these things also are questionable, and then whether they are also, made in a way that suits the best interest of what it is actually meant for, whether it is sometimes not being politicized or not. And there are certain incidences that you can just see and feel like, you know, even though the government comes to explain later, but whether it could have not been done at the very right times of it. I just don't want to use example, of course, for whatever reason, but there have been incidences where people have been demanding explanations, and then it never comes at the right time. So I think also being accountable also means not only communicating to the citizens, but also communicating to them at the right time with the right information that they're supposed to know, so that, you know, it could help, you know, in clearing people's doubts. Because otherwise, whenever that is not happening, people are just bound to think whatever they may be thinking, and the rumors will be stirring from all over. Yeah, but there are also, you know, moments that are just been seen as when you know there is you know, occasions where those moments have been seen as, you know, when in fact in practice, you know, government is just you know, being accountable to the people. And then, like I mentioned, during the president meet the people tour, you know, before a National Assembly committee, and that is not only about the president, but also it's about those that are acting on behalf of the government. For example, the ministers and other head of departments. Sometimes, you know, on certain occasions, that the National Assembly, you know, to defend you know, certain other budgets that are allocated to them. Yeah.
Coming back to Mr. Jawneh, still on the questions, basic questions of accountability. When do you think a government need to be accountable to its citizens?
Well, as far as I'm concerned, personally, that's my own opinion, I think it has to be regular. It has to be, there has to be constant flow of information between the government and the citizens. And it has to be timely. Timely, because you cannot wait, something happens today, you want to wait 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 months, you want to tell us. Look, for instance, at the audit of reports of government subvented institutions, and then even some departments. Like, for instance, National Assembly may be looking at the audit reports of some institutions for 2016. We are in which year now? 2021. You know, and then, interestingly, some of the managing directors and then heads of some of those institutions are either not available. They are not in the country, or some have already, unfortunately, passed away, or some are no more heads of those institutions. You understand? So that is not timely. That is not. So it has to be timely. We have to do the right things at the right time. So as far as I'm concerned, government being accountable to the citizens should be an ongoing thing, and it should be regular. It should be regular. But let's say, for instance, we've seen what happened in Faraba incidents. That's supposed to be a report. After the report, there should be action. I don't know what happened to it. You understand? So many things are happening, you know, and before we know about them, the information is no more relevant to our context. So I think for me, it has to be a regular accountability mechanism has to be in place, so that government can always be updating citizens as to what is happening in terms of the governance, in terms of resource allocation and spending, so that we, like I said at the beginning, citizens can have confidence in the government and can have that trust in the government.
Before going back to Ebrima, Mr. Jawneh, yes. What is the fundamental problem here? Especially when it comes to the citizens. Sometimes when you question our intelligence, people will say, no, we are very intelligent.
Sure.
But what is the fundamental problem here? Because more often we seem to not care about these things. We take them as normal. As far as we have our daily breads on the table, some of us we think is okay and we are fine. But what is the long time effects of this silence about the irregularities that are happening in our country as citizens? Seeing them as citizens and being quiet and being comfortable with it.
Well, I think
the long-time implications.
Well, I think for me, Omar, is the question here will give me another question of the issue of patriotism. Quite often we talked about patriotism, but how many of us care about patriotism? Because if we care much about ourselves than our country, then the problem of patriotism becomes even more relevant. So I don't care as far as I'm having my daily bread. I don't care. Somebody also said, I don't care because as far as I'm concerned, everything is okay. But the system is not okay and the system is not working. You know what happened at the end of the day? The poor and the most vulnerable in the society will continue to suffer at the detriment of the few who say they don't care. And they're seeing the system get rotten. So I think what is more important is that we definitely have to question ourselves about the issue of patriotism as Gambians. Are we definitely patriotic? Yeah, it's left to some contestations. So we'll say, well, we are, but are we all patriotic? That is the question mark, Omar. Because if you, all of us, when you are employed to work in government, especially as a civil servant, we all have our general orders. We all have the general orders, sorry. We have term of reference for the work that we should do. And we are told that we should be accountable to the Gambian people. But at the end of the day, still now the institutions that we are working on, all these kind of things are happening in those institutions and no one cares about them. So are we definitely fair to the Gambian state? That is the question. So for me, and the implication that you're asking is that, like I said at the beginning, is the poor and the most vulnerable in society who will continue to suffer. Because at the end of the day, they can't fight for themselves. They expect you and I to fight for them. But if we are comfortable with the status quo, then that is going to be very serious. And this culture of I don't care definitely will deter national development. You know, the development that we are yearning for as a country is going to be very difficult for us to reach there. Because if you look at the roads that we are constructing, the public infrastructure, you go to our offices, people supposed to come to work at 8 and close at 4. Some people come 10, 11. By 2, 3, they are packing their bags going home. And they expect salary at the end of the month from the poor Gambian. You are asked to construct a road of good quality. You go and construct a very bad road for the people, and the rest of the money goes in, only God knows where it goes. So who are we accountable to? Are we definitely accountable to the Gambian people? Are we fair to the Gambia as a country? So these are some of the questions that need to be, we should be thinking about as Gambians, all of us. I don't have the answer to all this, to be honest with you. But as Gambians, we should all be asking ourselves some of these questions. Omar.
Ebrima, how important would it be to focus on building what others will call the new Gambian? I don't know whether that exists at all, but don't you think we have reached a time when we need to sensitize, we need to educate our people? Of course, we have many who know already, but they don't care, like Mr. Jawneh said. But you have also others who don't know. You just take few examples about certain areas. Let's say places like Woolley, where he is from. You know, for reasons best known to them, majority of them are so aware. I don't know how, I don't know why, but you know, that is the reality there. But you go to other places. When you talk about development, when you talk about government accountability, government transparency, they don't care. As much as they think and they see government building roads, constructing roads, buying new ferries, they are okay. How important will it be to sensitize the citizens, like we are doing today, on their rights?
I think sometimes like we tend to have a gap in communication. For example, I can say CSOs are very much active when it comes to sensitizing the people, going out to the grassroots, knowing some of the problems that they go through, and you just name it. But also, sometimes we also see the challenge that they are faced with. You know, most of the time funding becomes a problem. They only depends on, for example, the likes of IRI and other institutions that are international NGOs to help in this process. But what we'll also ask, wouldn't there not be a need now to see also how internal agencies can also help in this process? Like I said, for example, sometimes like when the people are engaged In development, I think they call it the bottom-top or top-bottom approach. You know, most of the development that comes sometimes, where are people being even engaged about it? It's like it comes from the government theme, and then it has just been made like that. Even if you looked at the national budget, for example, it has just been drafted. Virtually, I'm not sure if people even are consulted. You know, it reached at the National Assembly. The National Assembly is given 14 days, you know, to just scrutinize it. Where it will in fact be difficult for them to go back to the citizen and then, you know, just engage them and to see, you know, what is their input when they even have only 14 days just to do it, and then they cannot pass be in the process simply maybe because of they need to serve you know, the oversight function on that process, and then, you know, like the 14 days is not even enough part for them just to scrutinize all those things, talk less even going back to the citizen. So you can just see the level of citizens' engagement is kind of much weak, and then the people that are also working on this thing also are faced with some other challenges. I think it is high time that there to be a lot of engagement with the citizens in all the other, you know, in all the processes. For example, being the drafting of the budgets and certain other policies that are meant to, you know, to serve the people. Because whenever that happens, they can feel that sense of belonging. They can feel that, you know, this has to do with us, so that they cannot be a mere recipient of some of these, you know, services, but they can also be active participants in the process. But that can only be also, you know, when they are very much engaged, and then we certainly need to find ways and means of making sure that they are engaged, so that in fact the policies that we be drafting, it should be based on their needs, based on what it shouldn't be based on, or it wouldn't be based on what the government might think, you know, the people needs actually. It should be, you know, the bottom-top approach. You know, you engage them, you know, what is their biggest problems, what they truly need, whether it is water or whether it is road constructions, and they like, and so when it comes from there, they tend to embrace it, and then they feel that sense of belonging in the process. Whenever that happens, of course, the communication gap and barrier would be there, and whenever that also happens, also it can enable citizens to be active participants in the process.
Thank you very much, Ebrima. Jawneh, finally on the basic questions, because like I said during the introduction, this is mainly a sensitization program. It's not necessarily a program where we can discuss all the problems in this country. We just give our little ideas on how we think this country can move. Especially when it comes to the citizens, because they are the background of everything. They are the foundation. If the citizens are aware and they know what their rights are, it makes it easy for them, and it makes it easy for government, because then government will not feel comfortable. Because when you elect a government and those serving there are aware that there is demands for service delivery, they will deliver.
Quality.
Because if they don't deliver, they know what waits for them in the next presidential election. Absolutely. They will be voted out. So that is the kind of citizen we want to build in this country. A citizen who will not collect $100 from a politician and vote for him just based on that $100 or that bag of rice, but a citizen who will vote for the future, a citizen who will vote based on programs, programs that he think can transform this country. That is the citizen we want to build, and we will continue building that citizen. But finally, on the basic questions, like I said, on the accountability issue. Who accounts on behalf of government?
Well, Omar, that's a very important question. Government as an institution, government in general, ultimately have different actors. Now, at the end of the day, the president is held accountable to the Gambian people. He's held accountable to the Gambian people. A National Assembly member who is elected by a constituency is accountable to the people of that constituency. You understand? But at the end of the day, if you have a ministry, you have a department, and they are allocated resources, you cannot be head of that institution. Decisions have been made there that affect that institution, that citizens need to know about it. And you said, well, it's not me, it's the director of finance, or it's someone else. No. No. You being the head of that institution, you must take your responsibility seriously. Every individual must be held accountable for his or her action. But at departmental level, institutional levels, we have commands. We have commands. So I believe that everyone, first and foremost, must be held accountable for what you do. Whether it's about decisions that you are taking on behalf of the Gambian people, whether it's about managing resources, because at the end of the day, if it is about only institutions being accountable and people handling those institutions are not accountable, there's going to be a problem. So for me, as far as I'm concerned, it's not only about institutions being accountable. Because in fact, you cannot have an accountable institution, an institution that is more accountable, when people working in that institution are not accountable for their actions. So for me, it's not only about institutions being accountable. Yes, every institution is entrusted as collectively, you know, with certain responsibilities. So you have to be held accountable as an institution for those responsibilities entrusted to you by the Gambian people and the resources given to you on behalf of the Gambian people. But individually, each and every Gambian must be accountable for our actions. Because at the end of the day right now, if may God forbid you go to the traffic and hit somebody, and the person died or you have an accident seriously, and then you go to the office and say, no, it's not me. It's my director who's to be held accountable. When your director was working at the office, he wasn't aware of the accident. So institutions must be held accountable collectively, but every Gambian must be held accountable for our actions. And when it comes to the government, ultimately, government, like he said, being the primary duty bearer, must be held accountable for every right that has to be respected in this country. Yes, Omar.
Ebrima, what do you think has to change moving forward? Being it on the side of citizens, on the side of government, and you know, every other person. What do you think should change? Something fundamental.
I think a lot has to change. Actually, maybe in fact change is taking place, Joe at a very slow pace. But I think attitudinal change must be in place. He talks about something very important. You know, when we talk about accountability, it's easier to point out the government, to say that, you know, it's the government at the end. But also, you also play a role at the end of the day, because if you looked at, you know, government, for you know, in its realities, it's run by people. The government, you know, no institution or organization or institution is moving by itself. There are people that are running it. So those people also, at their own level, must be accountable. At the end of the day, they are there. Whatever service they are supposed to provide, they are providing for the people. He did mention also, like, you see in the public sector, for example, people going to work very late. Whenever they are always online, for example. And those are the things also that affect the development of the country, because whatever work you're doing there, you're doing it for the people. You're just not there just by yourself. You're there and you're supposed to deliver certain services for the people. For example, if you looked at the public enterprise, the government public enterprise, for example, I am not sure if they're doing actually very well. And they're supposed to generate funds that should be used also to develop the country. But if those, for example, who are working there, you know, are not doing their best, it becomes difficult at the end of the day for the country to move. So, and all these things, you know, goes down to attitudinal change. I think the attitude must change. People must make sure that, you know, they take responsibilities, and then they make sure that they're accountable at their own level. You know, accountability, when it is said, it is not only about the president or the National Assembly members. Fine, those also the primary duty bearers at the end of the day, but also all of us, you know, are supposed to make sure that we do what we're supposed to do at the end of the day. Whenever that happens, then I think there could be development, and then there could be transformative change. But also, that can only happen if attitude changes. Yeah, a lot can obviously, a lot should even be should change, but I think the attitude, whenever they change, you know, it becomes much easier. Yeah.
Mr. Jawneh, of course, I know we will wrap up very soon.
Sure.
But if you meet a group of citizens in their bantaba chatting about development, and you hear them say they're comfortable with a government that builds them road, they are comfortable with a government probably that give them probably enough electricity, what will you tell them?
Well, first and foremost, Omar, I am not sure that an aware citizen, an informed citizen, will feel comfortable just because you have good road alone. And I'm not also sure an informed citizen will still feel comfortable because you have probably a good school alone. No, that's not enough. That's not enough. Development is beyond infrastructural development. I'm saying that despite all the challenges that we have, we are very good and we are doing good at some point in this country when it's come to infrastructural development in some parts of the country. What is lacking is human development. How many Gambians can afford university education? How many Gambians can have access to quality, relevant education that they need? Go to our schools in the provinces. I just returned from the provinces yesterday. So for me, it's not only about what I will tell them is that development is beyond infrastructural development. Yes, it's key. We need good roads to access the hospitals. We need the good roads to go to the markets and the like, you know, to ensure that there is easy movement, you know, of goods and services for us. Very key. But that alone is not development. We need human development. We need to ensure that our people, even those who don't have the opportunity to go to the formal schools, also have the opportunity to get the right information, right education that they need to make informed decision so that they can contribute meaningfully to the socio-economic development of this country. So my answer for those people would be simple, like I said, is that, hey guys, development is beyond infrastructural development. We also need another form of development that you and I need, that is human development, which is key. Which is key. You want in the future the status quo of your family to change. You want your kids to become responsible future leaders of this country. They need the right education that they deserve, the right information, the knowledge that they need to become responsible future leaders of this country. So as far as I'm concerned, and it's, again, like I said, it's also subject to some form of contestations, but as far as I'm concerned, development cannot definitely be called a whole development without people having the right knowledge, information, and education that they deserve to be able to become informed citizens contributing to the socio-economic advancement of this country. Yes.
We just have 7 minutes to go. But coming back to you, Ebrima, after this probably we'll do our conclusion. I'll allow you to do your concluding remarks. But before coming to that, what do you think is the way forward, generally, being it on the side of the citizens who are, of course, like you said, right holders and government who are duty bearers? How do we fix this moving forward?
Thank you, Omar. I think first, you know, like I said before, we need a lot at the end of the day, but we can take it one step at a time. It is my belief that things are just moving at a very slow pace, but also I talked about the attitudinal change that needs to be, fixed somehow, or people need to work on that, and that is collective. And then also there should be that accountability at government's level for people to understand and to know what is going on, and then the responsibility is given to them by the citizens for them to know actually how they are executing it, and then that could ranges from any other treaties or agreement that they sign on behalf of the people, the money that they collect or the loans that they took, on behalf of the people, their programs and policies. These things should be communicated to the people. Whenever that happens, people can be active participants in the process, and then obviously when we all participate in the process, it will become so much easier. If that doesn't happen, actually, some other people won't be participating, and then developing a country, it is not something that can be done only by few, but by all. And then that can only happen, whenever government is transparent, whenever it is communicating to its people, you know, when it comes to its policies, its programs, you know, and everything that is engaged in that has to do with the interest of the public. So whenever that happens, they can collectively, you know, participate in the process. I think whenever that happens, you know, we all can participate in the process, and when we all participate, you know, the seemingly impossible becomes possible. Yeah.
Thank you very much, Ebrima. Maybe Mr. Jawneh, I quickly remind the viewers what is the program all about. Like I said from the beginning, the program is brought, of course, to you by the International Republican Institute with funding from the United States Department. And the program's objective is mainly looking at government accountability, you know, provide platform to government officials, although we are yet to have any of them in both the radio and the TV, but we are looking forward to having them in the future before the end of the project, and of course create awareness about the importance of government accountability like we have been doing from the beginning. We just have little over 4 minutes to wrap up. Maybe we'll give you the opportunity to not only wrap up, but you know, give your humble advice to those who are listening, and of course citizens in general and government in particular, on what do you think we can do better to better this country, because we need to make this country better. We are more than 50 years old now. We have to be on the right footing by now.
Thank you very much, Omar. First of all, thank the International Republican Institute and the Sahel Group for this very important opportunity. And I thank you for hosting us. And I thank our viewers as well for following this very important program. These are the type of programs that we need in this country. Programs that will give citizens the opportunity to know more about what they could do to participate in the governance process of this country. We cannot be sitting and watching and said everything is okay when things are not definitely okay. So we need to definitely participate as citizens. We need to hear the information that we definitely deserve to hear. And again, Omar, I think like you said at the preamble, during the preamble, when you were giving the preamble, is that we need a new Gambian. We cannot have a new Gambia in the absence of the new Gambian. And that new Gambian is a Gambian who is patriotic, a Gambian who puts Gambia's interests first before any other interests. A Gambian who will always defend the Gambia's interests, work in the best interest of the Gambia, against his personal interests, against his political party interests, against any other interests. Gambia first. So we need the new Gambian. We cannot have the new Gambia, as far as I'm concerned, without the new Gambian first. And therefore, as Gambians, we have the means, we have the power to ensure that we hold government accountable, especially the people that we are electing to a National Assembly. We can hold them accountable. But again, what is more important also, the government has to ensure that we have the right policy framework. He talked about access to information. It's a very important tool for accountability. He mentioned about the issue of anti-corruption bill at the National Assembly. These are things that we need in this country. We need these documents in this country. So once again, I just want to say that thank you very much for the opportunity. But as Gambians, we need to be active participants so that we can move this country forward.
Thank you very much, Mr. Jawneh. It's nice to have you. Finally, you just have 30 seconds to say goodbye.
Very short one, actually. Thank you very much, Omar, for hosting us, and then thank you to IRI for this project, and then by extension to the States of Department. I think these are the conversations that should be taking center stage. You know, it's about sometimes discussion. It's about having platforms whereby people can able to, as he mentioned, understand what is going well or what is not, and then how they can help.
Thank you very much, Ebrima, and thank you very much, our viewers. This was your accountability show brought to you by the International Republican Institute with funding from the U.S. State Department. Thank you very much until we meet you again. Bye.